Hi, and welcome to this AI in C# video on the Microsoft Agent Framework. Today we're going to cover the Dev UI, where we'll give an introduction, meaning we'll only see what it can do, and later we'll go into a bit more real-life scenarios, but more on that in the end part of this video. So inside the tool, I put Dev UI down here because I probably don't think there will be more videos about it in terms of new code. So I put down here so it's easy to take hold of. And in my case, I'm using Azure OpenAI and then using the new package here called Dev UI. So I think it's easier that I show you the code first, and then we will talk about it, or the end result of the code. Because this is a web API running normal ASP.NET Core, and once it runs, we end up with this website. And this website is a developer website, a little like Aspire started out as a developer website, or something that you don't release, but is something you have doing testing and deployment and so on. And what it can do is we can just talk to it. In this case, it's the comic book guy from South Park. So we can say, what is best Star Trek or Star Wars? And for people who know the series, he's very, very condescending. So we will get a long answer back. So what you can see is you can do a normal chatbot. You can get the raw events from all the responses. You have some traces that don't work because this tool is a port of something for Python, and it is sort of ported over, but not entirely ported over. It's a bit buggy still. In this traces part don't work. The tools do. I can show that if I go to another agent and say, what is the weather like in Paris? And we can see it made a tool call, and we can see arguments in and out of those tool calls and so on. And this one talks like a pirate, so let's just it up. But again, it is a bit not finished for .NET yet, because this is not what you do in .NET. The deployment guide talks about Docker and Python things, so it's not really finished yet. But the main part, which is the conversations work, we can go in and see a backend URL, which is also wrong because that's not the URL, and all the things is more or less Pythoning. There's also a box like if you press this button, it just fails. And up here, it has a gallery that is Python only anyway. But up here, there's some agents, so let's see some code why they are there, and then let's dive back to it after the fact. So again, this is a normal web API, and nothing special anywhere in app settings or anything. The only thing I have done is I've taken the launch settings here and went in and said I want to run /devui whenever it starts up, else you would need to do it manually. So I said launch browser equals true and launch yourself the devui. That's the only changes I've made here. Then I make a normal web application builder, and I make my Azure AI client just like normal. Then, in order for this to work, we need to, in our builder services, add three things. We need to add the chat client, and it's not a chat agent, it's the chat client. So we go in and take our normal chat client and say iChat client. We then add the OpenAI Responses API and the OpenAI Conversations API. And these two are just so this site works. The agents themselves use them through that, but in real life you don't need to. And then you have this builder.add AI agents where you just give it a name and you give it a description or instructions. So in this case, it was the reason why it was a comic book guy for South Park. And then you can give it tools like this that with AI tools get weather. Probably should increase this a bit. I'm on the new Visual Studio 2023, so I'm back in defaults. Let's do this so you can better see. Then we can also, instead of building the agent like this, I will come back to why I feel this is wrong to do this way. You can still build real agents, so just an agent just like we do normally with instructions, names, and tools. The important thing is it needs a name, else it won't work, and that name is the one it's being registered by here. Before we saw it just used name and instruction. Now we're actually using name and a delegate in order to create the agents. So we get access to the service provider and we get access to the key. And the reason for that is behind the scenes, if we go into the code that they have written, is that it's just adding the different agents as keyed singletons, meaning we have the name to find the specific agent, and that's what's being used when we have the Dropbox in the GUI. In my case, I don't need anything extra, and I don't need the key to set it up. So I'm just adding my agent here and giving it the same name both places, else it wouldn't work. Another thing we can do in this is to have workflows up and running. So in this case, we are building two agents that are part of the workflow. A French translator that translates any text that's given into French, and a German translator. And with such agents, you can of course go in and build workflows, just like we've seen up in the workflow. Let's find the workflow. We have it where we do the agentic workflows of concurrent, sequential, and so on. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. So I'm just, from these builders, getting the agents. So it's using dependency injection to get the keyed service of that agent. And I'm just putting those two agents into a build sequential workflow and a concurrent workflow. Just the same agents to see two different workflows. Once we've done up with all the setup, we can now go into building our web application like normal. And in development mode, of course, you could technically do it out of development mode, but I would not recommend that. Again, more on that later. We map our OpenAI responses, the AI conversations, and the Dev UI, which is the one that actually makes it so the UI is there. And then we run this. Down here is our tool that the agents were given. So if we do that and come back, let's see a little more in details what's going on. So we can choose our agent up here, and whenever we choose them, we can go in and make multiple conversations with them. And the real agent was behind the scenes where we nuked up our agent instead of these add agent UI. Then we have the French and the German translator, and have them also as workflow sequentials part. And we can't get rid of these. The reason they're there is that whenever we do the workflow, we need to say as AI agents. Because if we don't do that, Dev UI would not work. So when I was making this demo, I was trying to get rid of them here, but apparently I can't see how to get rid of them because I only want to see them in the workflows. But these are very simple and just underlying features. So if I say hello, it answers back in French and so on. So up here, the 4 here is not really interesting because that's just dumb agents. And again, if I take one of these and say hello, it will just say hello, and then just after that say bonjour and hello in German. And I think there might be some issues with using the workflows as GUI here because they just come back in one go. Technically correct, but that's the way they do it. But the workflows is perhaps one of the most enticing features of this. All this up here can perhaps be used for some discovery and that's it. I was almost about to say debugging, but in my book it's not really that. But I will get to that in a second. But the workflows are down here, and they are actually shown visually, which is really cool. So if I take this sequential workflow that takes my text when I say hello world, it will then run it visually. This is a quick one, but else it would still spin here, then go to this and spin, and go to this and spin, and so on. But we see that it come back and say hello world in the French one, and hello Welt in German one. And so this was a sequential where it just run one at a time. While if we took a concurrent, this is actually how a concurrent look in real life. In code, it's very simple to just say, here's the agents, but some batch and concurrent nodes will be created on the fly for you. And if we run that again, we will also see that it comes back and it says, in this case, German, and then French, and you can actually get it to write it in the different order because it's concurrent and just works, and depending on who comes back first. Let's see if we can get it happen. Yeah, so in this case it was French, German, French, German. I have seen it the other way around. Yeah, here it came that the German one was faster in this case. So that also proves that a concurrent one just runs concurrent, and whenever someone come back, they are the first output, which you of course need to take care of. So this is very much work in progress. Again, there's various buttons that don't work. There's sidebars here. There's deployment guides that have nothing to do with C#. Of course, all that will be fixed. My more pressing concern in all this, when I look at this code, is it's a cool demo, but is there actually some scenarios where that would in any way resemble real life and for this to be useful? Because if we look at this code, I'm not making my agents upfront. That is simply not happening because I often need the setup to be dynamic on the fly, that the user can choose which model to use, which tool to use. I often have multiple agents that talk with each other on the fly, building up the instructions based on input data. The input data in general is very long. It's a lot of JSON and so on. So yes, I could go in here and whenever I want to put in a very big JSON that I need to construct and often don't have because it comes from an external webhook or something like that. Structured output you cannot test. Like 75% of all my outputs from an AI is structured output, but there is no way to tell that because we are never ever running the run async or run streaming async where you tell AI needs structured output. So we get a cool looking UI that can do chatbots, but in my opinion, we're not building chatbots so often. That's already been done by ChatGPT. So I'm struggling a bit to see the real value other than discovery, learning for the first time how this works, what comes back, what's come forward. So, as I mentioned in the slide here, to be continued question mark. I will try to see and force myself in the real life scenario to see how I can do this. Because how can I make my AIs upfront with the data I want upfront, with the output I want upfront? Because I have not seen a way that you can use DevUI in any other way than building up the services at startup of your code. So I might find something, and there might be a second video on this to figure out how this actually is useful in real life production. Because yes, I could just expose my agents, but if they are not the same way as my real agents in my applications, then I'm just testing hello world more than anything. So that's the reason why I've been a bit hesitant to make this video, but I honestly don't think I will use this much day to day. But again, cool demo, and definitely a good way to also tell others, hey, this is how it works, this is how things run, and so on. Visualizing workflows the way you can, and so on. Because all the Python stuff will, of course, slowly over time go away, and it will become a direct .NET part. But day to day, I would much more rely on function calling middleware that I can control and save in databases and stuff. The raw HTTP calling if I want to see what's going on. But I might change my mind, especially when I go and do more workflows in the future. That's the most enticing part of me, that you can go in and see your workflows like these and see them run. Because then I at least just should give the input, because they will not have on the fly input like the other ones. So, but only time will tell. I will definitely follow up, but for now, cool party trick, but not any real value to me at least. So Dan, see you in the next one.